On this week's Gridiron Report, we have Lions' final few coaching pieces are starting to fall into place. The Red Wings and Pistons are possibly the hottest teams in their respective leagues, and the Detroit Tigers starting to show some signs of life. So let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the Gridiron Report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are
Welcome
found.
to the Gridiron Report, your Lions first all Detroit sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, February 5th, and the Dan Campbell coaching tree across the NFL has just become larger as Tanner Agstrand has officially moved on from the Detroit Lions and taking his talents to the New York Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess first and foremost, for Tanner Agstrand, just a huge congratulations on moving on, going to New York. I think really no one faults you at all. Being an offensive coordinator in this league is a tremendous job, and so we wish you the best of luck, Tanner, in your near future.
Yeah, it kind of was a move that we all saw coming. There, like we said last week in last week's episode, there was a number of different guys that were up for the Lions OC job. We kind of figured whoever the two or so people that didn't get that job would be leaving the organization to, take the NOC job from a different organization. So, good luck to Tanner Agstrand. But replacing him, we have David Shaw, former Stanford head coach.
Yeah, it's huge. I feel like David Shaw, he was such a hot commodity as a coach. Like I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago, even longer when he was at Stanford. I feel like he was kind of being groomed to be like, that next big coach in the NFL. Not really sure whatever happened with it. He hasn't. I think he left Stanford in 2022. He's been a couple different jobs since then. But yeah, I mean, Andrew Luck was just on PMT this week. He had nothing but good things to say about David Shaw. 96-54 record at Stanford, 5-3 in bowl games, including 2 Rose Bowl wins. So I mean, that's huge. He's the 4-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year. So, I mean, the dude, he can clearly coach, and I think he's going to be a good, really good presence on this team.
Yeah, his one loss in the Rose Bowl was to our Michigan State Spartans. I mean, yeah, during his time with Stanford, he finished, I believe, as high as 3rd in the AP post at some point in his tenure. He's last coaching role was in 2022 with Stanford. Since then, he was a senior personnel executive for the Broncos alongside Johnny Morton. That connection is there. That's probably how he kind of got his foot in the door a little bit, bringing Johnny Morton over from the Broncos. He has some connections to David Shaw. There's also other connections to David Shaw in Detroit. His dad, I believe, was a Lions coach back in the 80s, so he's familiar with Detroit in one way or another. But it's kind of surprising to see that we were able to get him in the same role as a passing game coordinator, because I know he interviewed for the Bears head coaching position last month, and there were a number of talking heads on ESPN and all those other First Take, all those things that were talking about how he'd be an absolute home run hire for the Bears as their head coach. So to bring him over with Johnny Morton, I think just kind of restabilizes this organization, or this offense at least. We talked about how there's so much turnover and so much more potential turnover that didn't end up happening that we're grateful for. But you have all these guys that are coming and going. And we just mentioned Dan Campbell's coaching tree is just getting larger and larger across the NFL. But then to bring in guys like Johnny Morton, who has ties to Detroit, and Dan Campbell, and has shown that, say what you want about his time with the Jets, he's shown that he can be, a good offensive coordinator. You bring in David Shaw, who's obviously, like we just said, is very proven. It makes me feel a lot better about this offense moving forward, having lost, Ben Johnson and his fantastic offensive mind, and then obviously now Tanner Agstrand as well.
Yeah, for sure. And if David Shaw to the Bears is going to be a home run hire, well, I guess ipso facto, right? He's a clear home run hire, maybe a grand slam hire for the Lions as our passing game coordinators. Shout out to Brad Holmes for bringing another really, really good coach into this coaching room.
Yeah, we mentioned it last week. I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I'm kind of hoping that this offense is coached as a coaching by committee kind of thing, in which we have a number of different voices in that room making the play calling, making the schemes, including Dan Campbell himself, who we talked about, has shown that he can be the primary play caller. He can, when it gets tough, he's the one who's able to make that decision to go for it on fourth and stuff like that. So it's really going to come in handy because we also got the news this past week that Scott Montgomery was interviewing for the Cowboys offensive coordinator. He was one of the guys, again, a few weeks ago that we were talking about was in line for this offensive coordinator position. It was him, Tanner, Hank Fraley, a number of other guys. And like I said, we kind of assumed that whoever didn't get this job would be looking elsewhere, across the NFL to try and potentially get that job somewhere else because they were also worthy of it. So it wasn't a surprise. It was more surprised that Scott Montgomery didn't get the job than it was that he's out there interviewing with other organizations. So we did get the news that he was interviewing for the Cowboys offensive coordinator position. I haven't seen anything come back about whether he got the job, is in second round of interviews, anything like that. I just know that he was, that it was out there, that he was interviewing with Jerry Jones and that squad. So even if Scotty does go, I feel confident with David Shaw in this organization, in this offense, staying pretty much the same and being able to hit maybe a little bit differently. They might switch up the run, the run cadence and the passing cadence and stuff, but I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to hit the ground running just as much as we were, last season and even the season before.
For sure. And if Scotty Montgomery, if he does get that Cowboys offensive coordinator job, best of luck to him and wishing him, a really good, a really good time in Dallas. I know we're not huge on the Dallas Cowboys, but still he's our boy and we want him to do well. It's just a rumor right now. And I guess speaking of rumors, Ty, can we touch on probably the biggest trade rumor right now, and that is Myles Garrett, former Texas A&M Aggie Myles Garrett. Of course, one of the best defensive ends in the entire NFL. He requested a trade, and your Detroit Lions are the favorite to land him at plus 350 odds, so about 3.5 to 1 odds. Ty, what do we think about Myles Garrett? Do we sell the farm on him? Do we try to lowball? Is there a place for him in this Detroit Lions defense?
I'll tell you what, this is such perfect off season for the Lions, NFL banter, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If I'm sitting over here saying, the Lions need to go all in this guy, our Super Bowl window is right now, go out and get him, pair him with Hutch, it'll be the best defensive line in the NFL. That all sounds great, but then you also have the other side that people are saying, why would we give up what we think it will cost to get him, thus, basically closing or putting a cap on our Super Bowl window, limiting how much we can pay our other guys and stuff. So again, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. What I will say is that I think it depends on the price at which Myles Garrett can be had for. The Browns are an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, they are. I know Detroit is comically, one of the worst franchises in sports. You got the Lions, the Sacramento Kings, a few other, bad franchises out there. The Browns, I truly think, are surpassing the Lions in their incompetency, just because they've been bad for so long, and at least we have something going now. So there is a chance in which you could go out there, you could lowball the Browns, and try and go after him. I think it depends on what you're able to lowball them with. I think it would be absolutely insane if you can, get Hutch on one side, Aleem McNeil in the middle, and then Myles Garrett on the other side. I mean, that easily would be the best defensive line in NFL, in the NFL, possibly up there with NFL history. But it really you got to think after this year, because Myles Garrett would be, I think he only has 1 year left on his contract. So after this year, you're going to need to start. He's going to want a contract. Actually, I believe he has 2 years, so he could play his 1 year, and then that next year he could technically sit out and say, I want my new extension, I want a new contract, and I'm not playing until I do. And that's right around the time that Detroit has a lot of guys they had to play. All these young guys that are driving this, have driven this rebuild and are now here are going to need new contracts. So you need to think about the money-wise. And it's so easy to be like, I don't care. Our Super Bowl window is now. Let's win the Super Bowl now, this upcoming year, and worry about the money later. And that's totally fine if you want to do that. That's fine. I'm okay with 1 year of Myles Garrett and then worry about the money later. But I ask you, what do you think? What would you give up to get that done? Don't even think about the contract down the line. What would you be willing to give up to get Myles Garrett here in Detroit?
Yeah, and I think you said don't think about the contract. I think first of all, I am going to comment on the contract just a little bit, if that's okay. So Myles Garrett, he's 29 right now, so 2 years will be about 31 if my math is correct there. And Yeah, there's no reason to think that, a 31-year-old defensive end is going to be, holding out for some massive contract. I mean, we could probably go look in, the history books just to see how many prestigious defensive ends, get another major contract. I know he still has a lot left in the tank. You see what TJ Watt is still doing at, a couple of years older than Myles Garrett is right now. But just want to say, like, there's no reason to think that he would just absolutely, hold out and screw over the Lions after next season. But with that said, to answer your question, Ty, I feel like the Browns don't have a ton of leverage in this trade because Myles has requested the trade. So I'm gonna put on my procurement hat for a little bit, if that's okay. Just talk a little bit negotiating. So I do think that if you're Brad Holmes, you can try and lowball a deal. I mean, hell, if the Lakers can do it, then I think so can we. And you mentioned that the Browns, just as an organization, not very well run. I think the Deshaun Watson trade really did cripple the Browns' future, and it's going to go down as one of the worst trades in sports history, in my opinion, not just in the NFL. And so I think that further hurts their leverage. I think they have to move on from this guy, one of the best defensive ends in the National Football League, really the only good player on this roster. I don't mean to just straight up bash the Browns, but they have this incredible player and then just a whole bunch of holes that they have to fill up. So I see why, they're trying to get some picks for him, but the leverage just doesn't seem like it's there for me. I think that, to answer your question, I would like to see, the Lions they're obviously going to need at least one first-round pick. If you can get it done with like a 2025 first and second-round pick, multiple mid-rounds in future drafts, maybe they don't have a quarterback right now. You could potentially throw in Hendon Hooker to sweeten that deal. I personally would be a little bit hesitant to throw just multiple first-round picks, like a 2025 first, 2026 first. I think that at that point you are kind of hemorrhaging the Lions' future, and you never know what's going to happen with Garrett if he does, maybe try to hold out after next season. So I'd be a little hesitant to just straight up throw the farm at him. I think that you can use some leverage and kind of get a good deal for the Lions, just based on where the Browns are right now as an organization.
I think the beautiful thing about Brad Holmes has been his ability to locate the diamonds in the rough at the end of the drafts. You have all these guys that are playing meaningful minutes in football games that have come outside the first round. They're coming in the third, fourth, fifth round of the NFL draft. And even that first round pick is going to be, even if we do, the worst happens, we fall short again, it's going to be somewhere around like 27 to 29 range. So it's not going to be a high first round draft pick. So I think you do have those two things going for you. That it's not a super high draft pick that we'd be giving up. And Brad Holmes has proven he can find diamonds in the rough later on in the draft. I don't know. Maybe I'm just alone in this. I've seen Hendon Hooker thrown in on multiple deals. He kind of seems to be like that sweetener for a lot of different teams. I've seen, some mocks for guys like Max Crosby and stuff like that. And it always seems like Hendon Hooker seems to be the guy that's like thrown in there. I don't see it. I'm not sad to give up Hendon Hooker. I don't know what other teams really see in him. He's already an older QB. And we can, spend a breakdown on Hendon Hooker and the roster and stuff like that in a different day. But I don't see Hendon Hooker being that vital to this organization. So if that's what it takes to get him, get us across the goal line or the finish line, I'm all for it. Just like as a quick comp, I saw this on Twitter. I think Shefty tweeted this out a few days ago. Khalil Mack, when he was 27 years old, was traded from the Oakland Raiders to the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears gave up 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a sixth-round pick for Khalil Mack, a second-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. So it was kind of a lot going out and a lot coming in. They got Mack and a second and a fifth for, the 2 firsts, a third, and a sixth. Now, Khalil Mack was 27 years old. Myles Garrett is 29 years old. But Myles is coming off a 14-sack season. So I think it might come down to, I think what could get it done is 2 first-round picks. And I think if you're confident in, there's a lot smarter guys in the organization who are thinking about the contracts down the line. They know who will be ready, when they can really start getting these guys signed on their extensions and what guys can wait to try and like spread it out as much as possible to try and limit the impact of all these contracts coming down. If you can kind of confidently say, okay, I think that we can handle a Myles Garrett contract in 2 years, and you can confidently say, like, we can kind of keep the band together as much as possible. At least money is not going to be an issue. It's if people leave, it's going to be because they want other opportunities or whatever. I think I'm giving up 2 firsts for Myles Garrett. I think that's where I'll do 2 firsts, and maybe if you want to throw in any more than that, maybe we'll get a few. You can get crazy. We'll do 2 firsts and a 5th, and you give us Myles in a 3rd or something. Get crazy with some extra add-ons and stuff like that. But I think if you're confident, you can re-sign him. I'm giving up 2 firsts, and I think that's right where I land.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it too. As much as I would like to keep that maybe 2026 first round pick, if that's what it takes. I mean, I'm just picturing Aiden Hutchinson on one side and Myles Garrett on the other side of a defense, and I just if you're an offense, like how do you stop? You don't stop that. Like you literally don't. You hope for some kind of miracle or God forbid an injury, but yeah, I think that they are clear Super Bowl favorites if that happens. So yeah, if you do the deal and you win a Super Bowl out of it, I mean that's more than the Lions have ever been able to say. So yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, you would start the season with probably the top 2 best odds for Defensive Player of the Year on the same defensive line in Aiden and Myles Garrett, and then in the middle you have DJ Reader and Ali McNeil, who are 2 of the top run-stopping nose tackles and defensive tackles in the NFL. I mean, that would be, like I said, that would easily be the best defensive line in the NFL. It would be pushing it for best defensive line in NFL history, I think. And that might be Homer, bias bullshit, but I think it truly would be. It would be up there. So we wouldn't be a Lions sports podcast if we didn't address the Myles Garrett rumor. I think the odds that actually came out for Detroit, it was on some kind of obscure book. I did see going around Twitter. I'd be curious to see if there actually are odds on like an ESPN bets or something like that. But it wouldn't be a sports podcast, especially about the Lions, if we didn't talk about that one. The other one that just recently came out yesterday is that of Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, a little bit different. It's the opposite. Cooper Kupp doesn't want to leave his team, but his franchise and his organization are literally kicking him out the door. I think it was a little bit of disgruntledness. I think Cooper, they probably wanted to keep it in-house a little bit, and they told Cooper, we're looking to trade you. Cooper said, no, please don't. They came back and said, that's too bad. That's how the business works. And then Cooper came out and publicly said, hey, everyone, just let you guys know, I don't want to leave, but they are looking to trade me. So it's probably something that they would have wished kept in-house, but because of the bad blood or whatever happened, it got released. So Cooper Kupp is being rumored to be connected to Detroit as well. We don't have to go as in-depth with Cooper Kupp to Detroit because it's definitely a different position, whether, of need and stuff like that. Are you giving up anything for Cooper Kupp?
Maybe pennies. Certainly not a lot. I'm just, as much as I love Kupp as a player, I think he is a hell of a player, or at least he used to be. Just looking at his stats, he hasn't played a full season since his Triple Crown season, and of course that was an incredible season. It went for almost 2,000 yards. 16 touchdowns, but since then he's started 9 games, 12 games, and then 11 games in the 3 seasons since. So yeah, and now he's 31. I believe he'll be 32 before the NFL season kicks off next fall. And for me, like, I don't know, I don't see a whole lot of value. I mean, maybe you can bring him in if you can, I don't know, throw like a 6th round for him. I think maybe that makes sense, and he becomes your wide receiver 3. Can still get some yardage. I mean, I did see some flashes out of him when he was on the field before he got the injury, and then of course he missed some games. He came back, and it seemed like he was mostly just running cardio the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, while Stafford was throwing to a wide open Puka Nacua. So again, maybe that's scheme, maybe that's Stafford going to a different guy, and maybe Coop does still have something left in the tank. Again, love him as a player, but yeah, I'm certainly not giving up more than. Realistically, like a 5th round, 1 5th round, maybe 1 6th round for him. I don't see myself going more than that if I'm Brad Holmes.
It's different than the Myles Garrett deal because of, like I said, Myles Garrett is an absolute position of need. Cooper Kupp, if he came to Detroit, like you said, he is a great talent. He was a great talent. He is just made of glass. And you look at the list. I mean, Amon-Ra still would be our wide receiver number 1. Because of Jamo's 1,000-yard season last year and what he's kind of exploded and being what he can do to take the top off the defense, Jamo is still going to be number 2. Because of Jahmyr Gibbs, even David Montgomery, like their ability to catch out of the backfield, and having Sam Laporta as tight end, some kind of combination of those 3 would probably be your receiver. I mean, at what point, how much would you give up for wide receiver 3/4/5 in Cooper Kupp. So I agree with you. I don't know what I'd give up for him. It's hard. Would you? And I'm just thinking about this out loud. Who clears who? Amari Cooper or Cooper Kupp?
It's tough to say because I feel like Cooper is just better right now, but I don't know. He went to the Bills, and talk about guys who were running cardio. He didn't do anything when he went to the Bills. I would love to be proven wrong, but from what I saw, he didn't do much. I do think Coop is probably. I think he's a bit younger, and I do think he's probably better right now in their career, but. I don't know. He didn't do anything for the Bills either, so it's hard to say.
He didn't. He's 30 years old. Like I said, I don't have Cooper Kupp's age in front of me, but Amari Cooper is 30 years old. The Bills traded for Amari Cooper this year. It was Amari Cooper and a 6th-round draft pick for a 3rd round and a 7th round. So, like, if you're talking about that, and again, if Amari Cooper is slightly better than Cooper Kupp at the moment, maybe you pull that out a little bit. I guess maybe I would do that. I don't know. It was just interesting. Detroit being tied to Amari Cooper or to Cooper Kupp. Got too many Coopers going on right now. But I did like. I saw what let's see. Gary Davenport wrote in Bleacher Report today. So regardless of whether you think we should trade for Myles Garrett or Cooper Kupp or anything, Gary Davenport had just an awesome quote today. He said, "Deal for Kupp, go flip a couple firsts for Cleveland Browns edge rusher Myles Garrett, and go win the damn Super Bowl." And you can't really argue with that.
Hell yeah. If it leads to a Super Bowl, I mean, I'm giving up anything. But yeah, I joke. I don't want them to give up anything. I want them to be smart about it. And Brad Holmes, he's proven to be one of the best GMs in all of the National Football League. So I know he's going to do the right thing. But if it leads to a Super Bowl, get it done.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Rams, in the Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade that kind of kicked off our rebuild. They kind of traded everyone for a Super Bowl, put it all on the line, got their Super Bowl, and they've been able to kind of piece it back together and not go to the bottom from that trade. They're still, in the playoff picture and stuff like that. So, like, if that's the case, we're putting all on the line for a Super Bowl and you were able to come away with one, I'm doing it 100%. So, yeah, like we said, we wouldn't be a Lions sports podcast if we didn't at least bring up the Myles Garrett thing. And, it was just fun to bring up the Cooper Kupp. I don't personally think either one of those get done. I want to just go on the record saying I don't think it's going to be possible. I just feel like big swinging deals like that don't happen very often. And more times than not, when you have a star the caliber of Myles Garrett, demanding a way out, I feel like they normally will figure it out, or he'll go to a different team. I feel like it never happens to us. So I don't think either one will happen, but we had to at least bring it up. Okay. We do have a listener voicemail surrounding the Detroit Lions and really football in general. So let's give that a listen right now.
Hey guys, it's Megan. I just want to say I really love your podcast. As somebody who's just now starting to get into football, and more specifically Detroit football, you're informative, you're entertaining, you always come with the hot Detroit takes, so thank you. My question is not necessarily about Detroit, but more about football in general. No matter how much that I read about it and try to learn, the one thing I can't wrap my head around is clock management. Can you give a football for dummies explanation of how and why coaches might manipulate that time clock for their benefit? And then following up, who do you think in the league has the best time management and why? What does that do for them? Can't wait to hear next week's episode. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Megan, for the call. I love that it's sort of you took it and zoomed it out and essentially had this, like you said, the football for dummies question. Because a lot of times, especially on this podcast, other sports podcasts and stuff, so we can get kind of too much in the weeds. So it's nice to take a step back and just kind of explain stuff like this. It's a great question. So really, clock management kind of can come down to a number of different aspects and come into play in a number of different ways. The way that kind of makes the most sense to me is really depending on how your team is built out, the type of players that you have, the type of coach you are, the type of plays that you like to call, the way you manage the clock can really change and alter the way the game is being played. And by that, I mean, you sometimes, depending on what you're calling, you can try and speed the game up. If you want to try and get, as many possessions as possible, you want to try and get down the field and score and get the ball back, get down the field and score and keep going. You're going to basically manage the clock in a way and call certain plays that manages the clock in a way that makes sure that you continue to have the ball. You can kind of go into the shootout. If you kind of feel that a shootout, like a 50 to 45 kind of score is the best way for you to win. So you can kind of manage the clock and call your plays in the best way that you see fit to make that happen. And the vice versa of that is saying, if a shootout is not the best case for us, we want to try and keep this game at like a 13 to 16 score. That's going to be the best way for us to win. You're going to want to treat the clock completely different. You want to really start to slow things down and take your time, slow things down on the field, but let that clock run. Take your time getting up to the ball. Run plays that, running plays, the clock is going to continue to run. So you're going to do a lot of running plays and let that clock run in between the different plays and different possessions to try and basically cut in one game you could have a 5-play drive, and that drive could go for 7 minutes. You also could have a different game and you could have a flat 5-play drive, and that drive could go for 2.5 minutes. So it really depends on how you are trying to win that game, what fits your team and your players best.
Yeah, and I'll probably just jump in there. And Megan, thanks so much for the voicemail and for listening. Glad we can, kind of bridge a little bit of that gap in football knowledge. And yeah, for me, like clock management, I think that it's really under the microscope during a 2-minute drill or a 1-minute drill, either at the end of the half or more often than not at the end of a game. And it can be really difficult. And I know it's really easy for like me on my couch or Tyler on his couch to be yelling at the TV, like, why are you not calling a timeout if there's like 45 seconds left? It's really situationally dependent. But it's easy for us just, looking at the game and nothing else, just staring at that clock. But, putting yourself in the shoes of a head coach who is probably thinking about a million different things, potentially calling plays and, personnel and the likes. And so it can be really difficult. The 2-minute drill, the 1-minute drill can be, really difficult. And, I'm looking at you, Matt Eberflus, on Thanksgiving for, what not to do on that 1-minute drill. But yeah, for me, I think if I was a head coach, I would probably hire someone if this is even allowed, just to be my clock management expert, to say like, hey, there is 45 seconds left. We still have all 3 timeouts. We are, on our own 40-yard line. We should clock it now, because we're if we let another play happen and there's 25 seconds left, we're not going to be able to use all 3 of those timeouts, and one's going to be wasted. So it's really it's all about timeout management, clock management, having plays ready so that you can maybe dial up multiple plays in one huddle, and then really run that turbo offense or that no huddle offense after that. So it's extremely difficult. I don't even pretend to really understand. If I was a head coach, I'd probably be horrible at it. We see a lot of head coaches that are insanely horrible at clock management. Tyler, I'm wondering, any coaches, just to answer the last part of Megan's question, what coaches stick out to you as actually being good at this clock management? Because so many suck.
Yeah, immediately who comes to mind is someone like Vrabel. Or Bill Belichick, who they know, and it's not so much clock management, I guess it is, but they know specific rules and know how to, like the loopholes in the rule book in which they can manipulate the clock by running certain plays and getting penalties on purpose in certain times to run the clock and manage the clock in a way that benefits them. So I don't necessarily go immediately to who has the worst clock management, but actually go to who has the best. I will say, I know you mentioned Matt Eberflus on Thanksgiving with the Bears. Hand up, I might be the actual worst at clock management, at least in NCAA 25. The amount of times I've run out of time at either halftime or at the game on the 2-yard line because I mismanaged a timeout or something is egregious. I mean, it's just disgusting. So hand up, I will say Vrabel and Belichick probably the best in the NFL. The worst might actually be me.
Yeah, and I think my last point, all these NFL coaches, just play Madden, just play College Football 25. Like, if you keep on getting yourself into these situations where you don't know when to call timeout, like you're just just play a little Madden, and then you'll just feel it out. It's like a simulation for you. So yeah, it's not easy, but yeah, it's seemingly from the couch, it can't be that hard.
Yeah, life's just a simulation. But great question, Megan, and it really does tie back because talking about David Shaw and Johnny Morton, as we have all this turnover on the offensive side, there was a point in time when we thought we were going to have a first-time OC running our team. And with first-time OCs, you can sometimes get into that issue of they're not working the clock as they should be, and they might forget about timeouts or accidentally run things. So it actually does tie back really well because bringing guys like David Shaw on the staff, who we know has been a really good head coach in the past at Stanford and has been around NFL teams for a long time. A guy like Dan Campbell, who sometimes can struggle with the clock a little bit, having a David Shaw on the sideline, a Johnny Morton on the sideline, who we know can run a proper clock, will be extremely beneficial, and it'll just help our offense not skip a beat. So really does tie back. Great question. Ties back perfectly. And that kind of wraps up our Lions talk. But for probably the first time in Gridiron podcast history, we're having a really balanced podcast today because we have more stuff to talk about with the Detroit Pistons. The NBA trade deadline is this week. So jumping into that, we've seen a number of different trades go across the NBA. A lot of them people thought the Detroit Pistons would be involved into. They obviously are pretty much the only team to have NBA cap space, meaning they're the only team that can basically match numbers. So if two other teams are making deals for two superstars or something and the salaries don't match up or anything, Detroit can kind of jump in. You can give us a second round pick for our troubles, and we can make sure the money basically checks out, essentially buying draft assets, maybe somebody who's kind of out of favor on a different team. We can kind of buy our way there. That's kind of the way the Detroit Pistons were expected to operate this trade deadline. So far, we haven't seen it. It was reported that the Pistons are seeking a future first-round draft pick as facilitator, using their $14 million in cap space in a multi-team trade scenario. The league sources told Hoops Hype. The two deals that have gone through, the Zach LaVine trade and De'Aaron Fox trades, the ones that we kind of expected to come through, Detroit hasn't been a part of. So that was a little bit shocking that they weren't involved in any way trying to collect some kind of capital there. But there are still a number of trades down the line that we're expecting to see at some point that Detroit could step in and start to collect some assets. The Jimmy Butler trade, Brandon Ingram trade. There's still time in the next 36 hours before the trade deadline comes and goes.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, there's a couple different things that the Pistons can do, right? Stand pat, not do anything. They can, try to go get someone who can contribute, or really, they could just, try to, like you said, take on an aging contract or maybe a non-team friendly contract from another team and potentially get some picks for it too. So I guess with all of those in mind, what do you see the Pistons doing before the trade deadline on Thursday?
So out of those three, I'm going to say my priority, number one, what I want us to do the most is standing pat. I know that's boring. And by standing pat, I don't mean literally do nothing. I mean, let's not make too much of a splash any which way. We're not going to buy. We're not going to sell. We're going to do exactly like we just said. And like they've come out and said, they're going to facilitate bigger trades. We're going to use this money that we have collected over the last 5 years of being absolute dog water and taking on bad contracts. And we're going to help facilitate the big trades. And in return, you're going to throw us a few second-round picks. You're going to throw us a guy, like I said, who has fallen out of favor of the head coach, who still has some potential. You're going to give us. I don't want any corpses or anything. I want someone who can actually, participate in basketball activities. But I don't want us to go either way. Too hard one way or the other. My second sort of priority behind there would be if I had to choose, and we can't say pat or anything, I would say that I want to be buyers. And when I say I want to be buyers, I don't want us to go out and get CJ McCollum. I don't think that's going to happen. I know he's been tied to Detroit. I don't want us to go out and get Brandon Ingram, back before LaVine was traded. I don't want us to go out and sign Zach LaVine. Stuff like that is win now, forget about the future sort of thinking. And I think in too many times, if you're the Lions, like we talked about with Myles Garrett, you can kind of think like that. Like we truly are a win right now. Our Super Bowl window is right now. We don't necessarily have to think about the future. You add one of those guys to this Detroit Pistons team, you're not winning the championship now. So it's win now, don't think about later, but you're not winning right now. So adding those guys, I think, would be a mistake. It kind of would be reminiscent of the Blake Griffin trade back in 2017, 2016. And that was so much fun to watch Blake actually ball out. But it kind of set us back a few years, and I guess it just took us on a different trajectory that I'm not willing to go back onto. So if we are going to go out and buy, I'm looking at like a Alonzo Ball with the Chicago Bulls. Alonzo's averaging 7.2 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 5.1 assists, and shooting the three ball at 42%. Detroit needs a secondary ball handler. Now that Jaden Ivey went down, You have Marcus Sasser, who's doing pretty well as a secondary backup ball handler, but Lonzo will be perfect. He's good he's good defensively on the ball. You also could look at Kobe White, who's also on the Bulls. He's averaging 18.4 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, 4.6 assists, and he's shooting 36% from three. I don't think Kobe would actually be available, but he's someone that kind of fits that. Bobby Portis, another name who's been thrown around, averaging 13.4, 7.9, 2 assists, and he's shooting 36% from three. So, like, if you're going to go out and buy, I'm not buying on the big, shiny names. I'm looking at these guys that can kind of be had for a lot less. Bobby and Kobe White both have one more year on the contract. Lonzo is up this year. So I think that kind of is where I fit in there. If you're going to buy, it's not breaking the bank buy. And then the last option would be to sell. That's just not going to happen. There's no one, I think maybe coming into this year, we maybe could have sold at the deadline. You got guys that you kind of brought in like Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, B-Ball Paul, that would be prime selling candidates. But because they've really overshot their trajectory here, they're having more success than we thought this year. There's no reason to sell these guys. In fact, I would actively be pissed off if we went out and sold and shipped Malik Beasley out. Like, I want Malik Beasley to stay here for the rest of his career. I love that man. So selling would be actively, angering fans if you had to go that route.
Yeah, for sure. Threesley's the man. He's been really, really incredible for the Pistons this year. I see the remaining free agents, and I don't know. No deals look good to me. I don't really like what I'm seeing out of them. I don't think it would make sense to make some huge splash right now, given that Jaden Ivey is most likely out for the season, and the team is probably still a couple of years away from being an actual contender. No one thinks they're a contender right now, even though they are playing well, and I like what I'm seeing out of the Detroit Pistons. But they're not there yet at being a contender. So it wouldn't really make sense to make a huge splash right now at the deadline. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Just the team is playing really well. Just a couple more things on the Pistons. In 2025, they are 11-6, possibly 11-7 now. They did just lose last night, but at any rate, they're playing extremely well. Cade Cunningham in his last 10 games, nearly 29 points per game, 5 rebounds, and nearly 9 assists. So yeah, I love what I'm seeing, but I just don't think they are there yet to jump up to that next echelon of teams in the East, a top 3, top 4 team in the East where you could make a run. They're just not there yet, so I would love for them to stay pat here. Yeah,
and so I'm with you like that. And like I said, stay pat to me means you can still facilitate, you can still collect assets, not trading anyone out. But if you're going to go out and you're going to be able to kind of work as a facilitator and get a Lonzo Ball or, maybe even like a Malcolm Brogdon or someone like that, I'm okay with that. But you mentioned the loss that we just had, and we were 11-6, and then we lost. I have to say, Trae Young is just such a bitch.
Trae Young is a little bitch.
Watching Cade play, like last night against the Hawks, or 2 nights ago against the Hawks, was so pure. Cade plays the game so well in such a pure basketball form. I think he shot 1 free throw the other night. Like he still had 30+ points. He plays the game so well and such the right way. I watched no less than 3 possessions in a row where Trae Young went down there, damn near at half court, and not even trying to get the ball anywhere near the basket, just literally going up for a shot at half court, trying to get the foul. That is not how basketball is made to be played. I just don't understand how anyone could be a Trae Young fan and watch that and be like, that's our guy. That's the guy we want to get behind and play. I just had to say that. He annoys the piss out of me.
Yeah, a little bitch ball, and I think the Hawks are never going to win with him. It's not to say that he couldn't win on another team, but yeah, and that's more just a testament to Cade as a player too. He grinds, he hustles, and I love how he plays.
Yeah, but it is. I think now we have to say like the Hawks won the Trae Young for Luka Doncic trade, right? Because Luka is now on the Lakers.
Dude, I don't know if we want to jump into that. We probably don't have time, but I just want to say the Mavs owner, I feel like you should be thrown in prison or something. Not legitimately prison, but what you did to the Mavs franchise there probably set him back, years. And when you could have gotten a haul of 5, 6, 7, 8 first round picks for Luka. The number might not even exist, and to just get one. And Anthony Davis, who's literally made of glass, it's insane. So Lakers GM Rob Pelinka, I don't know how you did it, man. You must be Houdini.
Yeah, and Mark Cuban, a known listener of the podcast. Shout out Mark Cuban. Thanks for listening, guy. I'm sorry, and all the Mavericks fans out there, I'm sorry you guys had to put up with that. If you guys want to join us on the Pistons bandwagon, we'll make room for you. We're not denying anyone from the Pistons bandwagon. Come watch us. You can come watch your boy Tim Hardaway Jr. ball out for us. I got some love for the Dallas Mavericks. So yeah, we don't have much time to go into that. But anything else on the Pistons trade deadline?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing, trade deadline is Thursday, so hopefully we'll be talking to, some good things that Trajan Langdon has done on next Tuesday's episode, when we release it next Wednesday. I have all the faith in the world in him, so yeah, I know he's going to do the right thing.
Yeah, I do too. I'm confident we're going to come on next week and talk about how they either were able to use that money to get some more draft picks and draft assets, or actually get somebody that can step in and play for this season. So excited for that. Let's move on to the Detroit Tigers because it's official. Love is dead. Chris Ilitch and his wife filed for divorce today. So it's only natural that we're going to see some sort of repercussion with the Detroit Tigers and the Detroit Red Wings, right?
Yeah, and I've seen this on social media a lot that, this could go both ways, right? Like Chris Ilitch could just be, go in his spending phase and just go crazy, or he could, not spend another dime on the Red Wings or the Tigers again. So I'm hoping it's the former, but, Chris, you got to do what all divorced dads do. You got to go wild. You got to throw on some Creed, go buy a Corvette, and that Corvette better be named Alex Bregman.
At this point, it's absolutely insane. We can jump into Bregman because they've actually had some good signings this past week. But let's jump into Bregman here first because it is insane that that saga is still continuing. I agree with you now that a few different dominoes have fallen. We have single Ilitch going on. It's single Ilitch summer. I've just coined that. That's what it's going to be. I think the Bregman domino will fall here shortly. But it does sound like the Tigers are, quote unquote, still very much in the Bregman saga and the Bregman race. It did come out today that the Astros had said they are, quote unquote, I think it was Dana, their GM, said they're out on Bregman, or it said that they feel they lost on Bregman, meaning the Astros are essentially out on Alex Bregman. And just to kind of go through his numbers and what he brings for Detroit last year, Alex Bregman hit 260 as batting average, had an OPS of 768, 26 home runs, and 75 RBIs. He's obviously a righty bat in a lineup of Detroit Tigers that are primarily only lefties, which is not. It's pretty unique in the MLB, but it actually was too unique, and we were too lefty centric. So having a righty bat in there, his OPS of 768 would be the third best OPS compared to last year's season for the Tigers. Only Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter had a better OPS, and he would have led the team in home runs and RBIs. Adding him is a true middle of the order bat that can take this team. Like I said, it's a righty when we needed righties. He can hit for power. He can hit for his slugging is great. His defense is great. Like he is truly. It lines up perfectly to be added to this Detroit team.
Yeah, and Bregman also he slumped for a decent portion of last year. I think that and I'm totally speculating here. I think that maybe the pressure was on him to perform in a contract year, and he did struggle. Now it might have been a little injury as well that maybe I'm just not aware of. Hitters from last year, and he still would have hit the most homers in RBIs. So yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I think what you're getting out of Alex Bregman. I think his numbers are, if assuming he's healthy this year, they're going to be better than last year. He's a hell of a player, and he's a hell of a third baseman as well. So would love to see it happen. I live in Houston, and I've watched a ton of Alex Bregman over the years, and I'm a huge fan of him, objectively, or I guess subjectively, but would love to see him on the Tigers.
Yeah, and he's 30 years old. He's been to multiple World Series. He would bring a veteran presence into this locker room. That is still a young lineup. So we'd bring that in there. It just makes so much. It makes too much sense. Shout out Ben Verlander, obviously Justin Verlander's younger brother, also drafted into the Tigers organization. Is still a huge Tigers fan. Does a lot for Tigers media and stuff like that. I think he's tweeted every single day as far as I've seen, tweeted every single day, today would be a great day for the Tigers to sign Alex Bregman. I have a feeling he's going to every single day until Bregman signs somewhere. So, but like we said, Tigers actually have signed a number of different guys this past week and have done a pretty good job. So first they signed the reliever Tommy Kahnle. Apologize if that's not how you say his last name. To a 1-year deal. This bullpen is absolutely going to be insane. Now last year we did the sort of ride the hot hand bullpen by committee, really starting pitch by committee. And it really worked out. It obviously came back to sort of bite us in the ass towards the end with our starting pitching, but the bullpen's numbers were fantastic. And this Tommy signing is absolutely great. So last year he had a 2.11 ERA, 1.148 WHIP, 46 strikeouts, and 42.2 innings pitched. It is to me, it further bolsters what was already a strength of this team, and that was the bullpen. Yeah,
and I think to your point on, the starting pitcher by committee working in the playoffs, kind of that chaos off the mound. It did work at times for the Tigers, but I do think that that's a recipe that you could and should use occasionally in the playoffs. I don't think it's a recipe that you should use whenever your starter, Tariq Skubal, isn't playing, which is basically how the Tigers deployed it in last year's playoffs. And the luck did run out there kind of. I like where they're going. I think this bullpen, just kind of solidifying it from last year, it was very good last year. Love the signing there. I hope that he doesn't pronounce his name, Tommy, like you said he does. But who knows? More power to him if he does pronounce it Kahnle. I think that the bigger signing that I think we should probably talk about, Jack Flaherty. Welcome back to Detroit, buddy. 2-year deal, $35 million with an opt-out after year 1. So, a relatively friendly, team-friendly deal there. Flaherty, just by the numbers last year, with the 4 homers given up, 38 walks, nearly 200 strikeouts. He had 194, and then an ERA of 3.17. Pretty low WHIP, actually very low WHIP, 1.08. The average is closer to 1.3. So, love this trade. I think this is a Scott Harris masterclass. I mean, you trade Flaherty at the deadline last year. You get Trey Sweeney, who contributed towards the end of the regular season and also in the playoffs. You get a top 100 prospect. I believe he's catcher and first base there in Lorenzo. And then you get Jack back for, like I said, a relatively team-friendly deal with some flexibility. You can trade him at next year's deadline if things don't go well. We're hoping they go well. I think they will, but you still have that flexibility there. So, hats off to Scott Harris, man.
I love this because Jack so clearly wanted to be in Detroit. When he was traded, he said, I'm pretty sure before the deadline even came, he said he wants to be in Detroit. His family was here. He enjoyed his short time in Detroit. He wanted to be here. He understood that it was a business. They had to make the deal, and that's how that works. But he obviously then did one of the only, we talk about this a lot, if he loves Detroit so much and he doesn't want to leave, we can trade him, collect some chips for him, and then he can sign here in the offseason. How often does that actually happen? That literally never happens. And Jack Flaherty wanted to be here so badly. He literally did that. I just love it. He's a dog. He can be, our number 2 guy behind Scooby. And he genuinely loves Detroit. I just absolutely love that. I know, I think you mentioned it, and a few other people have mentioned it online. That he would have given this team, that extra boost in the playoffs. Maybe we would have beaten the Guardians if we had him. That probably would be true if we did. But I think the pieces, we were playing with house money. We were running on fumes towards the end of the last playoff series. The pieces that we got in him and Trey Sweeney, maybe if we had him and didn't trade, like you said, Trey Sweeney actually contributed last year in the playoffs. So maybe if we didn't trade for Trey Sweeney, we wouldn't even gotten there in the first place. So I absolutely love that we were able to bring him back like we did, but then he wants to be here so much. It just this rotation and this bullpen with Tommy Kahnle, maybe Kahnle, maybe Kahnle. I don't know. Well, Tommy, listener to the pod, call in. Let me know how you say your last name. It's going to be such a strength that if single Chris Ilitch goes out and does the thing that we want him to do, and that's just sign Alex Bregman, this might be one of the best off seasons I've had the Tigers have in so long. In signing Tommy, Jack Flaherty, Gleyber Torres, Alex Bregman. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2 even other guys. I mean, that would just be the perfect off season for the Tigers.
Yeah, it's huge, man. And just couple more things for me from the gritty Tigers. You mentioned Jack Flaherty on Twitter. I'm pretty sure he tweeted out after the deal got announced the picture of Tupac in the Red Wings jersey after I think it was a court case that he had in the 90s. And then, I think the other picture he tweeted out was probably Isaiah Thomas celebrating a championship with Dennis Rodman. So, I mean, the guy, he's pumped up to be back.
He deserves to
and we're
be
pumped
here.
up to have him. He absolutely deserves to be here. And you look at the Tigers' potential starting rotation. This might not be a day one rotation. It depends on Jackson Jobe and if he's going to be a day one starter. But regardless, I mean you got Tariq Skubal speaks for himself. I mean triple crown, Cy Young. He's in my opinion the best pitcher in baseball. Then you got Jack Flaherty. You have Reese Olson, Jackson Jobe, and Alex Cobb. And you even have, Casey Mize, who may or may not be anything. I don't know. He's probably still a bust, but at the very least, you have him as a piece in the rotation as well. I mean, I think it's easily a top 10 rotation in baseball and in a fringe top 5, in my opinion. I mean, there are teams that are clearly better. I'm looking at the Dodgers, the Braves, probably the Yankees as well. But the Tigers are up there.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. Speaking of the Dodgers, I'm actually surprised it was the LA Lakers that traded for Luka Doncic, and it wasn't the Dodgers who just put him on a deferred contract because they've been doing that with everyone, and they're insane. But yeah, this team, I mean, we struggle with offense, so if we get Bregman, that kind of makes us so much level. Even if we don't get Bregman, because of this rotation that you just mentioned, we have to be at least second best favorites in the AL Central. In like you said, probably a top 5 to 10 rotation in the MLB in general. So absolutely love it. Just finish the job. Do what you need to do, Chris. Go out, have a few beers tonight, get wasted, call Alex Bregman, and get the deal done.
Yeah, hit on some MILFs. Whatever you got to do, man. And just I guess one more thing. We talk about Chris Ilitch and we wanting him to spend more money. Don't look now. The highest payroll in the AL Central now belongs to the Detroit Tigers. So, we're slowly increasing that payroll and spending smartly, in my opinion. And that's a testament to Scott Harris. Tigers 17th highest payroll in the MLB right now. So we're creeping up there. It might even creep up a little higher after we sign Bregman.
Yeah, I think I saw just base numbers as to what Bregman is rumored to be asking for. If we sign him for what he's asking for and maybe even a little more to get him to come to Detroit, I think that would move us to the 14th highest payroll in baseball, which is still a far cry from what old Mike Ilitch would have done. But to see that from Chris is at least a sign of things going in the right direction. So let's get it done. Let's move right along, though. Shout out the Tigers. We actually had decent stuff to talk about with them, so hopefully we can come back next week, talk about the Pistons making a good move at the deadline, and the Tigers signing Bregman. Hopefully that's what our whole episode is next week. But the Red Wings deserve some credit this week, too. They've been fantastic.
Dude, Wings. I mean, hottest team in the NHL. The win streak now hits 6 games, and don't look now, but the Red Wings are in a playoff spot now. They own the number 1 wild card spot, at least as of right now, 6/11 on Tuesday recording this. But yeah, I mean, can't say enough good things about Todd McClellan and the Todd McClellan bump that the Red Wings are receiving right now. They are 14-4-1 under Todd. That's they own the best record in the NHL since December 28th. And this is not the first 6-game winning streak, but it's actually the second that they've had. They had a 7-game win streak, and now are currently on a 6-game streak. And when McClellan took over, the Wings were 15th in the East and quite literally dead. They were the dead Wings. And now they sit, like I said, at the top wildcard spot. They're only 1 point off the third playoff spot in the Atlantic as well. So I mean they're playing so hot. I will say that some of their play style, at least in this current win streak, it's probably not sustainable in my opinion. Their first winning streak under McClellan, they were scoring goals at will, 4.5 goals scored per game, and the power play was scoring at about a 52% clip. In the current win streak, they're scoring 3.3 goals per game, and power play is only at 14%. So they're scoring less goals. Some of it could be said about, a West Coast trip, a Canadian trip that, maybe a couple back-to-backs. It's hard on the boys skating. I think that's definitely part of it. But a big part, and this is a good thing, the defense, and more importantly, I would say that the goalie, the goaltender work, 1.5 goals allowed per game. The goalies have been just so incredible over this win streak and really laying it all on the line. I do think the offense probably should pick it up and can pick it up. But yeah, I mean, overall, love what I'm seeing out of the boys.
Dude, what the fuck was Derek Lalonde doing to those guys in the locker room that had them playing so terribly, and just the firing of him turned this team around? We talked about it in previous weeks about how in the NHL there is a real thing you can track. That's the head coaching firing, or interim head coach, new head coach bump. You see a team that has success with a new head coach midseason. It's a real thing that happens year to year. But Derek Lalonde must have had these poor guys just absolutely hating their lives going to play this game every single night, because just the energy is so awesome. It must have been like limiting all the young guys' potential too, because all the young guys we talked about in previous weeks, they're showing out, and the young Red Wings are the ones that are really driving all this.
Yeah, I think Derek Lalonde, like, I mean, you should be fired again. I don't know, fired again. Like, the one firing wasn't enough in my opinion. I mean, it's insane. That I don't pretend to know hockey schemes too particularly well, but whatever Lalonde was doing, do the exact opposite if you're a head coach in the NHL, because I mean he should be tried for like domestic terrorism or something. But yeah, it was insane. The underperformance of the team, and now they're finally skating well. The young guys are skating well. And just love what I'm seeing. And I think probably one last shout out. I mentioned the goalie play. Alex Lyon, he's been incredible. His last 3 starts, 100 shot attempts on him. He has 94 saves, which is just really insane, and a 2-0-1 record to boot there. So huge shout out to Alex Lyon in net, and he's a big reason why the Wings are so hot right now.
Yeah, we'll get to see coming up here in the next few weeks if they're able to continue it. They obviously have some games coming up against the Lightning. They play the Blue Jackets, the Ottawa Senators coming up in a few. So we have some important games coming up that will really decide, because as Detroit is having this sort of fantastic last month, there's a number of different teams who are also just this year in general not performing as they should have, similar to Detroit to start the year. So there's a lot of different teams that are right in that middle sort of pack of teams. So we'll know hopefully in a few weeks whether as April in the D kind of comes storming up, if we can have some playoff Red Wings hockey in the next few weeks. So yeah, shout out to the Red Wings, shout out to McClelland, shout out to Larkin, who's been there for all the disgusting different lineups that they've had in coaching and stuff like that. So just shout out all the Red Wings boys.
Yeah, and I know it's only February right now, but I need that April in the D music on my Twitter timeline like I need to breathe right now. So I mean, it can't come soon enough.
We might even have to change our theme song for when it comes to April and D, just of that song, just for the month of April. If we do get playoffs for multiple teams during April, we'll change our theme song to April and D if we're allowed to, because of copyright and all that bullshit and stuff. If we can, we will change it if we get multiple teams in the playoffs. That's our promise. So, all right, we got to get out of here. That's our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find us on Twitter at Dutton_Tyler and Kyle_Marino. Join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That number is 313-306-7939. And if you like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars and leave us a review.
Thanks, guys. Restore the roar.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on, blast beats, thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.